$38,000 in HOA fines for a pine tree that's older than the HOA itself. That's when I knew this was personal. The HOA president had targeted 5 of my neighbors' lake cabins with the same bogus violations, forcing them to sell at rock-bottom prices. Now she wanted mine. When I discovered her name in my old files, everything clicked. This wasn't random. She'd been waiting 3 years for revenge, and my cabin was her ultimate prize. By the time it was over, lease fees would triple overnight. Dark secrets would surface. Drop a comment where you're watching from. I bet your neighborhood has its own HOA horror story. The 6-hour drive from San Francisco to Pinnaridge Lake usually calmed my nerves. But this October afternoon, my Tesla's autopilot couldn't navigate fast enough. 3 months away from finishing a major project for a Fortune 500 company, and I'd barely thought about my lakeside cabin. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, the place where I'd recovered from the worst burnout of my life after selling my fintech startup. 3 years ago, I'd stood on that dock watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains gold and decided to rewrite my life's code from line zero. The $2 million from the acquisition barely mattered compared to finding peace in those woods. My therapist had called it finding peace through the cabin, but I just knew that writing algorithms while listening to actual birds instead of notification pings had saved my sanity. As I turned onto Pinnaridge Drive, the familiar scent of pine and lake water should have welcomed me home. Instead, my cabin looked like a crime scene. Not an actual crime scene, but a bureaucratic massacre of neon-colored violation notices. 47 papers in various shades of threatening pastels covered my front door, windows, and even wrapped around the porch pillars like the world's most aggressive Christmas decorations. My hands shook slightly as I peeled off the first notice. Violation number 237. Pine tree exceeds maximum allowable height. I stared at the 60-year-old pine that had been growing here since before the HOA existed, before my cabin existed, possibly before Linda Morrison learned how to spell petty. Another notice. Dock lacks modern safety railings, referring to the handcrafted wooden rails my cabin's original owner installed in the 1970s. Unsubscription while defeating, because apparently birds landing on my deck constituted a crime against humanity. Ryan, thank God you're back. Rosa Martinez, my neighbor for the past 3 years, hurried across the property line with the urgency of someone who'd witnessed a tragedy unfolding in slow motion. Rosa had inherited her cabin from her grandfather and knew every quirk of Pine Ridge's history. Linda's gone completely insane. She's been targeting lakefront properties for the past 2 years, but the last 3 months have been absolutely brutal. The Johnsons sold last month, the ways before that. She hit them with so many fines they couldn't afford to fight back. Rosa's usually warm face looked drawn with worry as she helped me pull violation notices from my door. Each of these carries a fine between $50 and $200 per day. I did the math on Jimmy's place before he gave up. Linda had racked up $23,000 in fines over nonsense violations. Pine needles on the roof, wrong shade of brown on his deck stain, parking his boat at the wrong angle. I pulled out my phone and started documenting each violation, my coder instincts kicking in to analyze patterns. The HOA website loaded slowly on Pine Ridge's sketchy cell service, but I managed to pull up the recent board election results. Linda Morrison, president for 5 years running, re-elected with exactly 51% of the vote. As someone who'd spent years analyzing data patterns, those numbers look too perfect to be real. Rosa, these properties that Linda's been targeting, let me guess, they're all waterfront. Rosa nodded grimly. Every single one within 500 meters of the best swimming spots. Your cabin has the prime location, center of the eastern shore with the only natural sand beach. The Johnsons had the second best dock access. The Waynes had that beautiful cove. 5 cabins sold in 2 years, all to the same company called Pine Ridge Resorts, LLC. My laptop was still in the car, but I didn't need it to recognize a pattern. In the tech world, we called this a hostile takeover disguised as bureaucratic process. Create impossible standards and force them selectively. Forced out the original stakeholders, acquire assets at distressed prices. I'd seen venture capitalists do it to startups, but using an HOA to steal family cabins. That was a new level of predatory behavior. The total fines on my notices added up to $38,000, accumulated over just 3 months. Rosa, has anyone tried to fight back? Gotten a lawyer involved? She laughed bitterly. David Walsh tried to help the Wayneys, but Linda knows every loophole in the HOA bylaws. She's got 3 board members in her pocket, maybe more. And get this, she used to be a real estate agent until she went bankrupt in 2019. Lost everything when some client wrote a scathing review that went viral. Now she's using her HOA position to build her real estate empire. There's something personal about how she goes after certain properties, like she's settling old scores. The mention of a viral negative review triggered a vague memory. 2019 was the year I tried to buy my first house before the startup exit, when I was just another software engineer scraping together a down payment. The agent had been spectacularly incompetent, costing me my dream house by filing paperwork incorrectly. I'd been so frustrated I'd written my first and only Yelp review. My blood ran cold as I opened the app and searched my review history. There it was, 0 stars. Linda Morrison, avoid at all costs, most incompetent agent in Colorado. Cost me a house with her carelessness. 0 stars. If I could give less. The review had somehow gotten 3,000 helpful votes. I remembered that house perfectly. A Victorian fixer-upper with good bones and terrible plumbing. Linda had missed 3 deadlines, filed the wrong forms, and even showed up drunk to the final walkthrough. When the seller chose another buyer out of frustration, I'd lost my $20,000 earnest money deposit. The review had been my only recourse, written in anger at 3 a.m. after downing half a bottle of wine. Now, staring at those words from 4 years ago, I realized I'd unknowingly painted a target on my future self's back. My phone buzzed with incoming email. Unknown sender, subject line, mandatory meeting. I opened it to find a photo of my cabin taken from a drone angle with red text photoshopped across it. Condemned. The message below was brief. Mr. Thompson, see me tomorrow at 8 a.m., sharp in the HOA office. Every minute you're late doubles your existing fines. I've waited 3 years for this. Don't test me. Double. The implied threat in waited 3 years confirmed my suspicion. Linda Morrison had been planning this since the day I'd bought my cabin, waiting for the perfect moment when I'd be away long enough for her to accumulate ammunition. I looked at Rosa, then at my violated sanctuary, then at the photo of what Linda planned to do. The stress headache I'd spent 3 years healing started creeping back, but this time it came with something else: determination. I debugged million-line code bases and survived Silicon Valley Shark Tanks. One vindictive HOA president with a grudge. Time to show Linda Morrison what happens when you declare war on someone who solves problems for a living. Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, 3 monitors connected, and enough coffee to fuel a small startup. By 3 a.m., I traced Linda Morrison's digital footprint across 2 decades of public records, real estate transactions, and court documents. The Wayback Machine showed her old real estate website, complete with promises of integrity and excellence that had aged like milk in the summer sun. Her bankruptcy filing from December 2019 revealed she'd lost $500,000 when a major deal collapsed. The timeline matched perfectly. My review posted in September, her biggest client pulled out in October, bankruptcy by Christmas. Every document painted a picture of someone who'd fallen from comfortable middle-class success to desperate scrambling. And apparently she'd decided I was patient zero of her downfall. David Walsh answered my call at 6 a.m. because that's what good lawyers do when clients who helped fund their first office need help. Ryan Thompson, as I live and breathe, please tell me you're not calling because you've murdered someone. His voice carried the same dry humor that had gotten us through countless startup negotiations. Not yet, David, but the day is young. I need you to meet me at the Paneerage HOA office at 7:45. Bring your recording equipment and your best poker face. I forwarded him the violation notices and Linda's email while explaining the situation. His low whistle through the phone confirmed my suspicions. 38 grand in 3 months? That's not code enforcement. That's extortion. And this drone photo, Ryan, that's criminal threatening. You recording all this? Of course I was. 2 backup systems running simultaneously because redundancy isn't paranoia when someone's trying to destroy your life. The HOA office occupied a converted cabin at the lake's north end. Its rustic exterior, hiding what I discovered, was a thoroughly modern intimidation chamber. Linda had arranged the space like a courtroom, with her desk elevated on a platform and a single uncomfortable metal chair facing her, clearly meant for victims. David and I arrived 15 minutes early to find the door locked, forcing us to wait outside like supplicants. Classic power play. When Linda arrived at exactly 8 a.m., she looked every inch the suburban dictator. Power suit inappropriate for Lakeside in Colorado. Hair shell acted into submission, and a smile that belonged on a shark who just spotted a wounded seal. "Mr. Thompson, I see you brought legal counsel." How predictable. She unlocked the door with theatrical precision, making us follow her inside like obedient pets. The inside of her office confirmed my analysis. Awards and certificates covered every wall. Realtor of the Month from a decade ago, HOA management certificates from online courses, photos of her with minor local politicians. This was someone who built their entire identity on titles and perceived authority. She'd even hung her real estate license prominently, though a quick check had confirmed it expired in 2020. David took the second chair I grabbed from the corner. Despite Linda's theatrical sigh of disapproval, she clicked a remote and a projector displayed the first of what turned out to be 87 slides. Comic Sans font. She'd weaponized Comic Sans. "Let's start with your most egregious violations," she began, laser pointer dancing across photos of my property. I pulled out my laptop, making her pause mid-speech. "Are you seriously taking notes right now?" Linda's voice pitched higher with annoyance. "Just checking something," I said, searching through the original 1970 HOA documents I downloaded from the county website. "Interesting. Your first violation claims my grass exceeds 3 inches, but the actual bylaw only mentions excessive growth that impedes neighbor enjoyment. My cabin is surrounded by national forest on 3 sides. Are the squirrels complaining?" David covered what might have been a laugh with a cough. Linda's face flushed, but she clicked to the next slide with determination. "Fine, let's discuss your unauthorized structure." The photo showed my bird feeder. "That's a bird feeder, Linda. It's hanging from a tree." Her smile turned predatory. "Any structure not present in the original property survey requires board approval. That feeder wasn't there in 1970. The meeting continued with Linda growing more agitated as I countered each ridiculous violation. But everything changed when she accidentally showed her hand. An aerial view of my cabin appeared on screen, surrounded by the other properties she'd targeted. "As you can see, your property's non-compliance affects the entire Eastern Shore aesthetic. Once we remove your eyesore, the whole area can finally reach its full potential for the new resort. I mean, for community improvement." She caught herself, but not quickly enough. "Resort?" I leaned forward and David's pen stopped moving. "What resort, Linda?" Her recovery was swift, but unconvincing. I misspoke. I meant once we removed the violations. Obviously, though, if you can't afford the fines, the HOA does have the right to begin foreclosure proceedings. The gleam in her eyes when she said foreclosure told me everything. The door burst open without warning. Connor Morrison, 24 years old according to my research, stood in the doorway looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mom, I need to talk to you now." His eyes darted between David and me with something that looked almost like an apology. Linda's mask slipped completely. "Not now. Can't you see I'm in the middle of something important?" "We discussed this." The venom in her voice made Connor flinch, and in that moment I saw 24 years of similar dismissals. His shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself smaller. A defense mechanism I recognized from my own childhood with an overbearing parent. Connor's eyes met mine for just a second, and what I saw there wasn't the hostility I'd expected from Linda's son. Instead, there was exhaustion, shame, and something else. Resolve, like someone who'd finally reached a breaking point. He backed toward the door but paused, his hand gripping the door frame so tight his knuckles went white. "This is wrong, Mom, all of it. You know it's wrong." His voice cracked on the last word. Linda's face contorted with rage. "Don't you dare lecture me about right and wrong. Everything I do is for us, for our future. Now get out." Connor left, but not before giving me one last look that clearly said, "I'm sorry, and be ready." Simultaneously, Linda spent 5 more minutes outlining consequences. Her composure restored but brittle. "You have 30 days to correct every violation, every single one. Document everything because I'll be inspecting personally. One blade of grass too high, one bird dropping on your dock, and I'll initiate foreclosure proceedings so fast your head will spin. And Mr. Thompson?" She leaned forward, abandoning all pretense of professional distance. "This is personal. You cost me everything with your little review. Now I'm returning the favor." The admission hung in the air like a confession. David's hand on my arm kept me from responding as we gathered our things and left. In the parking lot, Connor Morrison was waiting by a beat-up Honda, clutching something in his hands. As we approached, he shoved a USB drive at me and whispered urgently, "Everything you need is on here. She's planning something worse. Check file number 1. Then he peeled out of the parking lot like the devil was chasing him. I plugged the USB into my phone. 47 audio files appeared labeled simply by date. I clicked the first one, and Linda's voice filled the car. "If Thompson doesn't sell willingly, we'll make him. I don't care if we have to burn his cabin down. I've done it before. I'll do it again." The USB files changed everything. Connor had been recording his mother for months, creating what prosecutors would later call the most comprehensive documentation of HOA corruption in Colorado history. Each file revealed another layer of Linda's scheme. File 12 captured her bribing board members. "Henderson, here's your 500. Wallace, 750 is agreed. Just keep voting my way." File 33 revealed the resort plan. 8 cabins demolished, 50-room resort in their place. My company gets 15% ownership plus $500,000 cash. But File 37 was the bomb. Linda on a call with someone named Dimitri, speaking in hushed tones about washing money through real estate purchases. "Your investors get clean property titles. I get my cut. Everyone wins. The HOA angle makes it all look legitimate. The Russian connection made my blood run cold. This wasn't just petty revenge anymore." Linda had stumbled into something much darker. Dmitry Vulov, according to my quick research, was connected to a network that spanned from Moscow to Miami, with interests in everything from cryptocurrency to cocaine. The FBI had been tracking his operations for years, but could never quite pin him down. He specialized in using legitimate businesses to launder money, and apparently Linda's HOA scheme had caught his attention. She probably thought she was getting a big-time investor for her resort dreams. Instead, she'd become a small cog in an international crime machine. The irony was almost poetic. Her greed and desire for revenge had led her straight into the arms of actual criminals who would eventually destroy her more thoroughly than any bad review ever could. I drove home to find my internet and phone lines cut. A work order taped to the severed cables claiming HOA infrastructure improvement. My security cameras were offline and fresh spray paint decorated my gate. "Sell or suffer" in dripping red letters. Instead of anger, I felt the same calm that used to wash over me when facing impossible code problems. Complex systems always had vulnerabilities. You just had to find the right exploit. I activated my Starlink backup connection. Thanks Silicon Valley paranoia for redundant systems, and got to work. "Nice try, Linda," I muttered. "But I've been preparing for network failure since Y2K. Within minutes, I was back online and diving deep into public records. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions about the scope of this conspiracy. Rosa organized an emergency community meeting that afternoon. 25 homeowners packed into the church basement, the only space in Pine Ridge that Linda couldn't monitor. The Petersons brought coffee and documentation of their own harassment. The Wallaces had spreadsheets showing suspicious voting patterns. Even quiet Robert Anderson, who'd served on the board since the 90s, finally found his voice. I've been keeping records too. Linda's been forging proxy votes, fake signatures from people who weren't even at meetings. At least 30 in the last election alone. I was too scared to speak up, but enough is enough. The room buzzed with shared stories and growing anger. Everyone had pieces of the puzzle, but nobody had seen the complete picture until now. I connected my laptop to the church's ancient projector and pulled up the website I'd been building all morning. SavePineridge.com went live during the meeting, displaying everything in stark clarity. Voting analysis showing statistical impossibilities, property records revealing the hostile takeover pattern, and a timeline linking Linda's bankruptcy to her revenge campaign. The crown jewel was an interactive map showing how every targeted property formed a perfect resort footprint along the Eastern Shore. This isn't just corruption, I explained, clicking through the evidence. It's organized crime using HOA laws as weapons. But here's the beautiful part. She's created a paper trail so detailed we could teach a class with it. I uploaded Connor's audio files carefully edited to protect his identity while exposing his mother's crimes. Within an hour, the website had 500 views. By evening, local news stations were calling for interviews. The story exploded on social media, with Hogan Wild trending across Colorado. Comments poured in from around the country sharing similar stories of Hogway corruption. My favorite came from a developer in Denver. "This is why we build Hogway. Free communities, Linda Morrison. Is everything wrong with the system?" But the viral attention brought unexpected consequences. My phone rang at midnight. Unknown number, heavy accent. "Mr. Thompson, you are making powerful enemies. Take down website, sell cabin, disappear. This is only warning." The voice was calm, professional, utterly terrifying. Not some local thug, but someone used to making problems disappear. "Who is this?" I asked, though I already knew. "Someone who protects investments. Dmitry Valalov has $50 million flowing through Pine Ridge Project. You are small problem becoming big problem. This does not end well for small problems." The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone and realizing Linda had no idea what kind of people she'd gotten involved with. The counterattack came at dawn. A process server knocked on my door with papers thick enough to use as a doorstop. Linda was suing for defamation, seeking $1 million in damages, plus immediate removal of the website. The lawsuit was clearly meant to intimidate. Her lawyer's online reviews suggested he was where legal careers went to die. But the timing revealed Linda's desperation. She'd filed before seeing the full website, which meant she didn't know about Connor's recordings yet. I called to David, who laughed so hard he had to put me on hold. "She's suing you for defamation when you posted public records in her own recorded words. This is what we call a slap suit. Basically, illegal bullying through courts. She just handed us another weapon." My laptop screen suddenly went black, then displayed green text like an old terminal. "Your bank accounts have been frozen. HOA emergency lien. Pay now or lose everything." My banking apps confirmed the nightmare. Every account frozen, credit cards declined, even my investment portfolios locked. My phone rang immediately. Linda's voice dripped with satisfaction. "How's it feel being broke, hacker boy?" "That's right. I found a judge who owed me a favor. Your assets are frozen until you pay every penny in fines. Or you could just sell me the cabin. I'll even let you keep 10% of market value. Call it charity." The smugness in her voice flipped a switch in my brain. "Linda, you just committed federal wire fraud, banking manipulation across state lines. That's FBI territory. This call is being recorded, by the way." The silence stretched for several seconds before she spoke again. All pretense of civility gone. "You think you're smart? I've destroyed bigger fish than you. Your website will be gone within an hour. Your life will be gone within a week. This is your last chance. Sell or burn." She hung up, leaving me staring at my frozen accounts. But Linda had made a critical error. She confirmed on recording that she was behind the illegal free. Within an hour, my bank's fraud department had reversed the freeze and flagged her attempt for federal investigation. The website stayed up despite multiple take-on attempts. I'd mirrored it across 7 domains on 3 continents. You can't delete the internet, Linda. The truth was out there, spreading like wildfire, and there was no putting it back in the bottle. The $1 million lawsuit should have broken me. 3 years ago, during the startup's darkest days, when my co-founder vanished with half our funding, it would have triggered panic attacks that felt like heart failure. But sitting on my dock at 2 a.m., watching moonlight dance on the water, while Linda's threats echoed in my head, I felt something different. Not fear, but clarity. My therapist had once said, "Isolation amplifies fear, that humans aren't meant to face predators alone." The code metaphor that kept surfacing wasn't about individual brilliance. It was about distributed systems. No single point of failure. Time to build a network that couldn't be destroyed by one corrupted node. I opened my laptop and started typing. Dear Peneerage neighbors, we're stronger together than alone. Emergency meeting tomorrow night. Time to debug our community. Rose's basement looked like a resistance movement headquarters by 7 p.m. the next day. 30 homeowners packed the space with more arriving as word spread. The Petersons brought a whiteboard and color-coded markers. The Wallaces had boxes of documentation going back a decade. People who'd never spoken at HOA meetings were finding their voices, sharing stories of Linda's harassment. Robert Anderson stood up first, his usual nervous fidgeting replaced by determination. I've been on this board for 15 years, watched it go from neighborly cooperation to Linda's personal kingdom. I kept thinking someone else would stand up, someone braver, but that's how bullies win. They count on good people staying silent. Not anymore. He spread out voting records showing impossible patterns, exactly 51% for Linda every election. The same names voting, despite having moved away years ago. That's when Rosa dropped the bombshell that would change everything. My grandfather was one of Peneerage's 3 founders, she announced, pulling out a leather portfolio I'd never seen before. He kept these documents in a safety deposit box with instructions to only use them if the HOA ever became corrupted. I think we've reached that point. The room went silent as she spread out yellowed papers covered in 1970 legalese. According to the original bylaws, founding family descendants have special voting rights. Basically, we have veto power over board actions that threaten the community. There's more. In cases of proven board corruption, founders can call for immediate dissolution and reorganization of the entire HOA. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Linda had been operating under the assumption that she controlled the board through simple majority. She had no idea a nuclear option existed. There's one problem, Rosa continued. I need proof of continuous property ownership and board corruption. The ownership is easy. My family's been here since day one. But the corruption needs to be documented officially. Everyone started talking at once, offering evidence they'd collected. The Petersons had emails showing Linda threatening them over a fence color. The Wallaces had recordings of board meetings where Linda silenced opposition. Together we had enough evidence to bury her, but we needed it organized and verified. I can help with that, Connor Morrison said from the doorway. Everyone turned to stare at Linda's son, who looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past day. I've been documenting my mother's crimes for 2 years. I have everything. Bribes, threats, forged documents, even video of her taking cash from the Russian investors. I can't watch her destroy this community anymore. Around 9 p.m., an unexpected visitor arrived. Frank Peterson knocked on Rose's door, looking like a man carrying terrible secrets. I recognized him from Linda's incorporation documents, her 30% business partner in Peneerage Resorts. I know I'm not welcome, he began, hands shaking slightly, but I need out. Linda's got dirt on me from a DUI 10 years ago, threatening to destroy my contracting business if I don't play along. But this has gone too far. She's planning to burn down 3 cabins next week, make it look electrical. I want to sell my shares and disappear. $150,000. What I paid in, not a penny more. I just want my life back. The room erupted in arguments about trusting him, but I saw opportunity. Owning 30% of Linda's company would create a massive conflict of interest. She couldn't use the company to buy properties while serving as HOA president if a hostile shareholder could sue. We'll take the deal, I announced, already calculating the logistics. But we need this done legally tonight with multiple witnesses. Frank nodded eagerly, pulling out a pre-drafted sales agreement. My lawyer prepared this yesterday. I knew someone would eventually fight back. Linda's gotten sloppy, overconfident. She actually told me last week that after she gets your cabin, Ryan, she's planning to change the bylaws to allow the board to seize any property for community improvement. She wants the power to take any cabin she wants. The room went cold. This wasn't just about 8 targeted properties anymore. Linda was planning to give herself legal authority to steal any home in Pine Ridge. I made 3 calls to investor friends in San Francisco explaining the situation. Within an hour, two had committed $50,000 each. The community pulled the remaining $50,000 with contributions ranging from $1,000 to $10,000. By 11 p.m., we had the money transferred and papers signed. I now own 30% of the company trying to destroy my home. The drive home should have felt victorious, but something nagged at me. Linda had been too quiet since our phone confrontation. No angry emails, no new violations posted, no suspicious activity around my cabin. In my experience, when bullies go silent, they're planning something big. I parked and walked to my dock, needing the lakes' calm to process the day's chaos. That's when I heard them. Boat engines in the distance, running without lights. Pinnage Lake had strict noise ordinances after 10 p.m., and nobody ran boats in complete darkness unless they were up to something illegal. I grabbed my phone and called Rosa. Get everyone with cameras to my shore. Now something's happening. The engines grew louder, accompanied by voices trying to whisper, but carrying across the water. IVE boats materialized from the darkness, converging on my dock like aquatic vultures. I recognized the lead voice, Linda's contractor, the one who'd cut my internet lines. Remember, make it look like structural failure. Complete destruction by morning. Boss wants no trace of the old dock left. My hands trembled as I started recording, catching boat registration numbers in my phone's night mode. This dock wasn't just wood and nails to me. 3 years ago, after closing the startup sale, I'd brought Sarah here to propose. She'd said yes as the sunset painted the mountains gold, and we'd planned our future on these weathered planks. The marriage hadn't survived the stress of my next startup, but this dock still held those golden moments. Now, Linda was about to destroy it because I'd written a bad review 4 years ago. Rosa arrived with 5 other neighbors, all armed with cameras and phones. We spread out along the shoreline, documenting everything as 6 men with sledgehammers and power tools systematically demolished 50 years of craftsmanship. The sound of splintering wood echoed across the lake like Pine Ridge itself was screaming. Each blow felt personal. This wasn't just property destruction, it was an attempt to erase the peace I'd found here. Other neighbors called the sheriff while we filmed, creating an unbreakable chain of evidence. By the time deputies arrived, nothing remained but broken pilings and floating debris. The boats had vanished into the darkness, but we had their faces, their registration numbers, and their voices on multiple cameras. Linda Morrison had just escalated from legal harassment to criminal destruction, all captured in high definition. The war was no longer cold, and she'd given us exactly what we needed to end it. Dawn revealed devastation that photographs couldn't capture. My dock wasn't just damaged, it was obliterated. 50 years of hand-laid planks reduced to splinters, floating like dead fish across the cove. My $20,000 boat had been cut loose during the chaos. Then someone drilled holes in the hole. It now rested on the lake bottom, visible through the clear water like a maritime gravestone. But instead of rage, I felt an odd calm. Linda had just graduated from HOA harassment to federal crimes. Destruction of navigable waterway infrastructure crossed into federal jurisdiction. The sheriff's deputy taking my statement whistled low when I explained, "Ma'am destroyed a dock on a federal waterway. That's Army Corps of Engineers territory. FBI might get interested too." I smiled for the first time in days. Exactly. She just made this a federal case. Connor Morrison was waiting at my cabin when I returned from filing reports. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, clutching a laptop like a lifeline. "She's completely lost it," he said without preamble. "After your website went viral, she spent all night screaming about revenge. I recorded everything." He opened his laptop showing me folders organized by date, 2 years of evidence, emails, financial records, videos of her taking bribes. 3 board members get monthly cash, Henderson, Wallace, and Martinez. She keeps $40,000 in bribe money in her office safe. But that's not the worst part. His hands shook as he clicked on a folder labeled Dmitry, the Russian investor. He's connected to money laundering operations in Miami. Mom doesn't know she's being used to wash dirty money through real estate. The FBI already wants him. She's in way deeper than she realizes. David arrived with legal documents and a grim expression. "Emergency injunction filed and granted. Linda can't touch your property or accounts while the criminal investigation proceeds. Also, Rosa is exercising her founder's veto, on all board actions from the past year. Every fine, every violation, every forced sale, all suspended pending review. He studied the destroyed dog. The federal prosecutor is very interested in those boat registration numbers. Turns out Linda's contractor has a record. 2 arson, 1 conviction. This is becoming a RICO case, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, designed for the mob, but perfect for HOA corruption. My phone buzzed with a text from my accountant friend. Dude, your HOA president claimed $200,000 in consulting fees from a Russian LLC. Never reported to IRS. Criminal Division opened a case yesterday. The emergency HOA meeting that evening was standing room only. Linda had called it to ram through new bylaws giving the board seizure powers. Instead, she faced 60 furious homeowners, 3 news cameras, and Connor sitting in the front row with boxes of evidence. She dressed for war in a power suit that couldn't hide the desperation in her eyes. Her usually perfect hair showed gray roots, and her hands trembled as she called the meeting to order. Before we begin, she announced with forced confidence, I want to address the vicious lies being spread online. This board has always acted in the community's best interest. You destroyed my dock, I stood up, interrupting her script. You sent 6 men to commit federal crimes. We have video evidence. Your contractor already confessed. The room erupted, but Linda maintained her brittle smile. I have no idea what you're talking about. Perhaps you should have maintained your dock better. That's when Connor stood up. The room fell silent as Linda's son faced his mother. Mom, stop. Just stop. His voice cracked but carried. I have recordings of you ordering the dock destruction, planning arson, taking bribes, everything. He opened the first box, pulling out printed emails. Financial records showing you stole $200,000 from the HOA over 5 years. Videos of you accepting $50,000 in cash from Dmitry Vulov. Recordings of you promising to burn down cabins. Linda's face went through a spectrum of colors. White, red, purple. Connor, honey, you don't understand business. Felonies aren't business, Mom. They're crimes. He turned to the room. My mother has been using the HOA as her personal revenge fund while pretending to improve the community. It ends tonight. The room watched in horrified fascination as Connor methodically presented evidence. Each document, each recording, each video built an undeniable case. Linda's transformation was terrible to witness. From composed president to cornered animal, her carefully constructed facade cracked, then shattered completely. You ungrateful little bastard, she screamed at Connor. After everything I've done for you, I built this empire for us, for our future. Connor's response was quiet but devastating. No, Mom, you built it on hatred and greed. Dad didn't leave because we were poor. He left because you became someone he didn't recognize. And now I see why. The words hit Linda like physical blows. She staggered, gripping the podium, her breath coming in gas. For a moment I saw not a villain, but a broken woman who let revenge consume her until nothing else remained. Rosa stood next, holding the founder documents like a weapon. As descendant of Pinarage founder Miguel Martinez, I invoke emergency powers under Article 12 of the original covenant. I call for an immediate vote of no confidence in Linda Morrison as president. The vote was swift and decisive. Hands shot up around the room, 40, 50, nearly everyone present. Even 2 of Linda's paid board members raised their hands, apparently deciding prison wasn't worth monthly bribes. You need 2/3, Linda shrieked. I count 15, no votes. I survive. Rosa smiled coldly. Founder votes count triple. Linda, you're done. But Linda wasn't finished. Her final meltdown would become Pine Ridge legend. You think you've won? I still own Pine Ridge Resorts. I still have the contracts. I still have the power. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands, dialing frantically. Vladimir, yes, it's time. Execute Plan B, all of them, every cabin on the list. She turned to the room with manic eyes. You have 48 hours before county inspectors condemn every one of your homes. Did you know the original surveys were off by 3 feet? Every single cabin is technically on public land. When the county seizes your properties for encroachment, guess who will be ready to buy them at auction? She laughed hysterically, mascara running down her cheeks, looking nothing like the composed president who terrorized us for years. You destroyed my life with your review, Thompson. That one review cost me everything. My business, my marriage, my future. Now I destroy yours. All of yours. But her threat revealed her final plan, giving us time to counter. As homeowners shouted questions and Linda laughed maniacally, her phone rang. The blood drained from her face as she listened. What do you mean the FBI is at my office? What do you mean they have the safe? She looked around wildly, finally understanding that her empire was collapsing. This isn't over, she screamed as she ran for the door. But it was. We all knew it was. The woman who'd weaponized bureaucracy for revenge had finally overplayed her hand, and the house of cards was falling. As sirens wailed in the distance, Connor sat down heavily, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry it took me this long. I put my hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. That took incredible courage. He looked up at me with haunted eyes. She's still my mom. Despite everything, she's still my mom. The pain in his voice reminded us all that even justice comes with a cost. 6 a.m. brought Linda's last desperate play. 20 trucks rolled into Pine Ridge like an invasion force. County building inspections stenciled on doors that looked suspiciously fresh. But we were ready. The real county inspector, alerted by David at 4 a.m., arrived at 6:15 with the sheriff. What the hell is this? He demanded, examining the fake inspection orders. These are forgeries. That's a felony. The fake inspectors scattered, abandoning their trucks. Linda's nuclear option had fizzled into more criminal charges, but the real bombs were yet to drop. While Linda focused on her inspection scheme, we'd prepared 3 synchronized strikes designed to end her reign permanently. First, Rose's founder powers. At the emergency board meeting we called for 7 a.m., she stood before every homeowner who could walk. Under Founders' covenant, I hereby restructure all HOA fees effective immediately. Residential properties remain at $200 monthly. Commercial properties pay $600. Properties held by LLCs for development pay $2,000 monthly. This applies retroactively to when properties were transferred to commercial entities. Linda arrived expecting to gloat about inspections, but her face drained of color as she did the math. That's $240,000. You can't do this. Rose's smile was ice cold. Actually, with penalties and interest, it's over $300,000. Due in 30 days, or we place liens on all Pine Ridge Resorts properties. The second strike came from Connor, who'd spent the night with the FBI. Mom, I'm sorry it came to this. He turned to the room, voice steady, despite visible pain. I've provided federal agents with 2 years of evidence documenting my mother's crimes. They're executing search warrants right now. As if summoned by his words, Linda's phone exploded with calls, her assistant sobbing. They're taking everything. Her lawyer panicked. Don't say anything. They found the safe, her accountant. The IRS just froze all accounts. This is bad. Each call drained more color from Linda's face until she looked ghostly. But the third strike was mine to deliver. Linda, while you've been playing games, I've been shopping. As 30% owner of Pine Ridge Resorts, I've seen all financial documents. Your friend Dimitri, he's been under federal investigation for 18 months. That $200,000 he paid you traced directly to a Miami drug operation. You've been laundering money for the mob. The room watched in stunned silence as Linda Morrison crumbled like a house of cards. This isn't possible, she whispered, then screamed. I planned everything, every detail. She spun toward Connor. How could you betray your own mother? Everything I did was for us. Connor's response was quiet but devastating. No, Mom. Everything you did was for revenge. Dad didn't leave because of money. He left because you changed. Linda lunged at Connor, screaming incoherently. It took 3 men to restrain her as she clawed and bit like a wild animal. That's when the federal marshals arrived. 3 black SUVs, agents and FBI windbreakers moving with practiced efficiency. The lead agent read from a warrant. Linda Morrison, you're under arrest for racketeering, wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. The handcuffs clicking on Linda's wrists sounded like the end of a 5-year nightmare. She made one last attempt at dignity. My lawyers will destroy all of you. I'll own this entire lake when the agent cut her off. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. As they led her away, Linda passed by her cabin one last time. For a moment, the mask completely dropped. She looked at the home she'd bought with legitimate money before the hatred consumed her, and something like regret flickered across her face. I just wanted to matter again, she whispered to no one in particular. I used to matter. Then the moment passed and the hardness returned. She spit at my feet as agents guided her into the SUV. This isn't over, Thompson. People like me don't stay down. But we all knew it was over. The woman who terrorized Pine Ridge for 5 years was heading for federal prison, and her carefully constructed empire of revenge was nothing but rubble. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Reporters, interviews, community members crying with relief. But the best moment came when Connor approached me. I'm sorry about everything. I should have acted sooner. I put my hand on his shoulder. You acted when it mattered most. That took incredible courage. He looked up at me with haunted eyes. I keep thinking about who she used to be. Before the bankruptcy, before the anger, she used to laugh. His voice broke. When did my mom become a monster? I didn't have an answer. Sometimes good people let darkness consume them until nothing good remains. The war for Pine Ridge was over, but the scars would take time to heal. The federal courthouse in Denver became Linda Morrison's final stage, though her performance lacked the commanding presence she'd cultivated as HOA president. 3 months of investigation had revealed the full scope: embezzlement, racketeering, tax evasion totaling $400,000, conspiracy to commit arson, and 37 counts of fraud. The prosecutors, armed with Connor's recordings and our evidence mountain, painted a damning picture. Linda's defense attorney tried the sympathy angle: struggling single mother, bad choices after bankruptcy. But when they played the recording of Linda ordering my doc's destruction, several jurors visibly recoiled. The verdict came back in under 2 hours: guilty on all counts. Sentencing day brought the closure many needed. Linda stood before the judge in orange instead of Armani, her HOA president persona stripped away. Miss Morrison, the judge intoned, you betrayed the fundamental trust of community leadership. You weaponized bureaucracy for personal revenge. 3 years federal prison, 5 years probation, lifetime ban from any position of financial trust, and restitution of $500,000 to your victim. Linda's sob as they led her away was the last sound she'd make in Pine Ridge history. But her story wasn't over. The Russian connection led to a larger federal investigation, indicting 12 people for money laundering. Dmitry Volkov fled to a non-expedition country, leaving angry investors and frozen assets. Pine Ridge Resorts LLC died in bankruptcy court. Its assets, including 5 stolen cabins, subject to judicial review. Community healing began immediately. Robert Anderson, elected interim president by unanimous consent, called his first meeting with self-deprecating humor. I promised to bore you all to death with actual democratic process. His first motion was repealing every rule Linda had instituted. Gone were the grass height requirements, the architectural committees, the special assessments. We returned to the original 1970 bylaws with minor modern updates. Rosa established the Pine Ridge Founders Fund using the $300,000 in fees Linda's LLC owed. The money would provide scholarships for local students and emergency assistance for homeowners facing hardship. My grandfather believed in community supporting community. She explained this fund honors that vision. The 5 families who'd lost cabins to Linda's scheme faced a complex path home. The court ruled that sales made under duress were voidable, but fair compensation was required. Eventually, each family was offered the chance to repurchase at original sale price plus inflation. The Johnsons wept when they got their keys back. The Waynes immediately threw a barbecue for the whole neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson, 78 years old, planted new flowers the day she returned. Linda might have stolen my home, but she couldn't steal my roots. Connor Morrison became an unexpected hero. Despite his mother's crimes, the community embraced him, recognizing his courage in choosing justice over family loyalty. He spent days helping victims navigate legal paperwork and evenings in the coding boot camp I'd arranged. I'm thinking about tech law, he told me one evening while debugging JavaScript. There'll be more cases like this. People need advocates who understand both systems and human nature. His transformation from Linda's nervous son to confident advocate was remarkable. When he landed his first developer job 6 months later, half of Pine Ridge celebrated with him. His success story became part of our healing, proof that we could choose different paths than those set by our parents. She's still my mom, he told me once. I put money in her commissary account. I write letters she doesn't answer, but I won't become her. That distinction mattered more than any code he'd ever write. My own journey took unexpected turns. The homeowners elected me HOA president, a role I'd never wanted but felt obligated to accept. My first act was instituting radical transparency. Every meeting live-reamed, every document public, every vote recorded. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, I told the community. If we're doing something we wouldn't want filmed, we shouldn't be doing it. The reformed HOA became a model for others struggling with corruption. We consulted with communities from Oregon to Florida, sharing documents and strategies for democratic governance. The Docky building became a community project that healed more than splintered wood. Every household contributed something: lumber, labor, or just lemonade for workers. The Petersons, master woodworkers, led construction. Connor designed memorial plaque. When systems fail, debug together. Pine Ridge 2024. Instead of rebuilding exactly what was destroyed, we created something better. Wider paths for wheelchairs, lower sections for children, integrated benches for sunset watching. The project took 2 months with different families taking shifts. The Wallaceys brought their expertise in electrical work, adding subtle lighting for evening gatherings. Rose's cousins, skilled in metalwork, created artistic railings that told Pennaridge's history in abstract designs. Even Mrs. Patterson, who couldn't lift lumber, contributed by researching the original 1920s construction techniques, ensuring we honored the past while building for the future. The day we celebrated its completion, someone mentioned it was stronger than the original. That's what happens when you rebuild after trauma. Rosa observed, "You don't just restore, you improve." iCabin became headquarters for a new venture born from our struggle. The HOA transparency platform I'd pitched to investors wasn't just theoretical anymore. We'd proven the concept under fire. $5 million in funding let us build tools for communities fighting corruption, voting verification systems, financial transparency dashboards, communication platforms that couldn't be controlled by single bad actors. We hired locally when possible, turning Pine Ridge into an unlikely tech hub. The platform launched with 100 beta communities and grew to 5,000 within a year. Each success story validated our approach. Technology serving human community, not replacing it. 1 year after Linda's arrest, Pine Ridge threw its first annual Liberation Day barbecue. The entire community gathered on the eastern shore, using the beach Linda had tried to steal. Children played in water that reflected Colorado mountain glory. Adults shared stories and food while the sun painted everything golden. Connor gave a speech about choosing courage over comfort that left few dry eyes. "My mother taught me something valuable," he said, voice steady. "She showed me who I never want to become. Every day I choose to build instead of destroy, to help instead of harm." That's my way of honoring who she could have been. Even reporters who'd covered the original story returned, amazed at our transformation from battleground to model community. As the party wound down, I found myself on my rebuilt dock with the original neighbors who'd fought back. Rosa raised her beer to debugging corruption one line at a time. We toasted, but the moment carried weight. We'd faced down a tyrant using wisdom, courage, and community solidarity. The system worked when good people refused to surrender to bad actors. Later that evening, I received a letter forwarded from my attorney. Linda's handwriting shaky but recognizable. "I hope you're happy. You won. Enjoy the cabin I couldn't burn down. LM." No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just bitter acceptance of defeat. I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the fire pit. Some code couldn't be debugged, only deleted. The final scene writes itself. Sunset over Pennaridge Lake. My laptop opened to code that would help another community fight their own Linda Morrison. A message popped up from a homeowner in Texas. Your platform just helped us expose 3 years of embezzlement. Thank you for showing us how to fight back. I smiled and typed a response, then closed the laptop to watch the light fade over the water. 3 years ago, this place saved me from burnout. Now it had taught me that the best debugging happens in community. Peace at Pine Ridge wasn't just absence of conflict, it was presence of justice. And that's how a software engineer used logic, law, and laptop courage to refactor an entire HOA operating system. Linda Morrison learned about FAFO the hard way. Fraud around, find out in federal prison. As for me, I learned that the best code isn't written in IDE, but in the communities we compile together in real life. If your HOA is showing signs of corruption, remember, document everything, read the source code of your bylaws, and never underestimate the power of distributed human networks fighting for justice. This is Ryan Thompson signing off from Pine Ridge, where the only bugs now are actual beetles enjoying their natural habitat. System, exit zero, peace out and stay vigilant, neighbors.